Okay, let's see. Alright, it's 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. We may have a few other committee members come rolling in as we are going here. But we'll go ahead and get started. We have a couple items on the agenda for the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for the month of October. I appreciate all of you being here and anybody watching at home. The first item, and the item that we generally talk about first, but we always talk about it every month in this committee, is the Public Transit Ridership Report. So, as I mentioned in the council meetings and other places, for anybody in Norman that is interested in public transit and any of the data and information about how our system is run, how many people are riding it, what's going on with future plans and changes, please tune into this committee because we get updated by city staff every month. We ask questions and some pretty valuable information if public transit is important to you. So staff is here to give us this month's update.
Thank you, council member. You all have the monthly report in your agenda packet, but I'll hit some of the highlights and then answer any questions you guys have. In the memo part, I just wanted to thank everybody that participated, both here in this room and out in the public, on the ride-alongs during August and September. It was a lot of fun. We had about 20 to 30 people that did it over the course of those Fridays, and those ranged from elected officials, citizens, and Norman regional staff, and then city staff that didn't know a lot about the bus. So got a lot of good education in there, and I'm happy to do those in the future anytime, and probably will schedule some more like that again in the future. I thought it was really beneficial. But please reach out if anybody ever wants to take a no-risk trip with me. I'm happy to do that. We're still doing some public transportation responses to COVID, still limiting that capacity on vehicles, about half capacity, and then federal required mandatory face coverings. And then since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been cleaning buses, not the same, but also enhancing that with fogging and every night. We're working on some exploratory work for the Go Norman Transit Plan. We talked about that a little bit at our study session a few weeks ago. You guys all know about the Downtown Transit Center discussion, and then also looking at the additional bus stops that are needed with the recommended route network. There's about 80 additional bus stops that we need to create to realize the recommended route network. And there is an ACOG grant that we're looking at going after to get at least 75% of those costs recouped if we wanted to go after that capital money. So we're looking at that application right now, and you will have a programming resolution on your agenda in a few weeks for your review. The maintenance and operations facilities coming along great. We will be in there by the end of the year, and hopefully have a ribbon cutting and meet and greet in January where we get a little bit of time to clean up and make sure we know where the bathrooms are. We're getting really close. This is where we're getting down to the nitty gritty of stuff that's going in and making sure everything's placed just right. So we're very excited about that and having our own facility and getting out of that lease with OU and letting them use that space for what they want to. At our October 12th conference, as I alluded to a while ago, we got some direction about the microtransit and on-demand discussion, and we're looking at options to include in next year's budget cycle. So we'll keep you all apprised of that. And then just a few more things on the memo. We are still pursuing the purchase of the 2 battery electric buses, and we've had numerous meetings with the manufacturer and making sure that everything is spec'd the way we need it to be. I did include a paragraph about that ACOG grant for the potential bus stop improvements there. It's the Air Quality Small Grant Program, and there's a little bit of money there that helps mitigate some of our traffic congestion, and transit is a eligible project. And then lastly, a lot of my work this month has been working on our second submittal to the National Transit Database. We have to compile financial information and fleet and facilities inventory and operation metrics and submit that every year along with every other agency in the country to allow the FTA and other parties to do some analytics and see how the country's transit systems are doing. With that, I just want to point out some ridership metrics, and that's all in the performance report that's attached. For September, we had 931 as the average daily ridership, and that was up by 60 for August. So we were serving about 60 more folks a day on our public transit system. And then comparing September to or fiscal year to date this year, so July through September, to last year's fiscal year to date, we're about 13,000 passengers up from last year at this time. So we're pretty happy about that. We are seeing an increase as more and more people get out and ride the bus. And as we lifted capacity a little bit in June, we're still seeing people starting to ride the bus more. And then there's just a slight anomaly that our Saturday fixed route ridership was relatively flat compared to last year, where the previous 2 months were higher than last year. And that was because, as we all know, we had 4 home games in a row, and that really hampered our way to get around on the buses, and people don't get out a lot. So our ridership could have been a little bit higher if that wasn't the case, but we were happy to provide some service on those days. But with that, I'll take any questions. I know we got a couple more items on the agenda, so.
It's just notable that the Lindsay East route has got a 24.9% increase, and the September FY 2022, is that, what is that? That's next, or that's
this year.
okay.
That's this fiscal year, yeah.
Ending, okay,
Yeah,
ending 2022. Looks like, the East Lindsay route has more numbers than all of the other routes combined.
And that's been historically
Right.
pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah. So that's just something to note. We've seen that in the maps, how that area is the most densely populated part of the city, and where the most people that need transit as well. So, and I did notice the Saturday service, but I think that is a pretty good explanation. We don't normally have 4 home games in the same month.
Yeah, I think it was technically 3 that fell in September maybe, but yeah, we almost every Saturday was taken up by a home game.
So, okay. Any question? Councilmember Hall?
Just clarification. So we're not at full capacity yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I find this really encouraging that even at less than full capacity, we're seeing these dramatic increases in ridership,
Yeah.
which we were hoping to see.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Did it-
Councilmember Stubbs?
Did it say, I'm sorry, how much the grant was that you guys are getting for the air quality?
We're still looking at it. The application is due the 19th of November, so we're still figuring that out.
But you don't know the dollar amount?
We're currently looking at, so there's 80 new bus stops associated with the recommended route network, 80 new bus stops, and at $2,000, just as a round figure, it's about $160,000 for that project if we were going to build all of them, and that's with the landing pad and a sign basically. We'd look at benches and shelters with our partner at Tyler Media and try to figure out a cost sharing on that. But you have to at least do an 80% cost share, which is pretty typical, and we're looking at proposing 75% to be a little more competitive. We get more points that way. So all in all, we'd be asking for $120,000 from the grant program, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, well, thank you very much, Taylor. Appreciate your update.
Yeah, no problem.
Look forward to hearing next month.
I'm going to be joined by the rest of my crew up here.
The second item on the agenda is an overview of public parking available in the Campus Corner area. The genesis of why I requested this item was I was contacted by a Campus Corner merchant recently who was very concerned about somewhere for employees on Campus Corner to park, which has always been a problem. It was definitely a problem when I worked at Hideaway for 6 years. I thankfully lived close enough. I really just rode my bike all the time, didn't even attempt it. But we had servers that would park in the metered spaces, and they would run outside every 2 hours and move their car and keep paying it. And servers don't typically make a lot of money, or people working in most of the businesses you see on Campus Corner are minimum wage or close to that. And so unlike downtown, where I consider there's a lot of free parking around downtown. It may not be right in front of the building you need, but you can find a free place to park all day long, every single day of the week in downtown Norman if you are willing to walk a few blocks perhaps. But Campus Corner, there's really no extra space. There's no street parking that's not metered or timed around there. There's no public lots other than the one we just built, but that does cost. And so, given that this has been an issue for a long time, and we did have a parking study a couple years ago for downtown and Campus Corner, the Center City form-based code plan has parts that regard Campus Corner and the parking in it. So, sort of just an overall update discussion about parking on Campus Corner, but it was in main part because of a request by merchants about if we can do anything or figure out something for a place for employees to park. So staff is here to lead us in discussion.
We just learned about your interest in this yesterday, so I asked these gentlemen to put together a few slides for you to get you up to speed, maybe the newer council members up to speed on some of the things we've been doing, as you mentioned. I'll just mention, when I came here about 15 years ago, I was shocked that the city of Norman had 0 public parking lots. 0.
Yeah.
We were just in the process of beginning construction on our first public parking lot. Now that's different than facilities like this one, but exclusive public parking lot. It's very unusual. Cities all over the country, certainly cities our size, have many public parking facility structures. The city I came from in Kansas, half the size of Norman, had 12 public parking lots that we maintained as a public works department. So I just say that to say we're a little bit different, and that's exactly what council has wanted to explore. Let's do better. Can we do better? Can we provide more? What do we have, and where do we go from there? So I think we spent the last 10 years studying Campus Corner, downtown, on-street parking to figure out what we have and how we can do better. These guys are going to share some of that stuff with you. Also want to mention that one of the things we don't have is we've never had a parking division. So Public Works has kind of done meters, and we do maintenance, and police does enforcement, and municipal court does citation. No one owned parking. So a few months ago, the city manager in this year's budget allowed us to create the Transit and Parking Division. So we added the duties to Taylor, and just add, we do that a lot around here, just add more on the
Favorite thing to do. Like you're not busy
Taylor,
enough.
So if you didn't know that, Taylor is now your Transit and Parking Program Manager.
All right.
And he knew what he was taking on when we asked him to do it. We're thrilled that he taken that on. David Riesland, our transportation engineer, and in that role has kind of been that person who sort of took parking. But parking has been an afterthought. We don't do parking in Norman like most cities do, and we all think we can do better. And so we'll share some of that with you, what we've learned in recent years, and don't want to get too far in the weeds, but there's some interesting information that we have learned from these studies. We've got parking management plans. We know what you're describing. We know that it's a problem for employees. In fact, one of my favorite stories when we put the parking meters in Campus Corner, it was the merchants who wanted to raise the price of parking to keep their employees from parking on the street. That's why they raised the price of parking, and we accommodated that.
Those spots are so valuable.
Because those spots are so valuable for the customers, and the employees were filling them up. So that's kind of why it's $1 an hour in Campus Corner, to try to discourage the employees from parking in the metered spaces. But you're exactly right. There's really not too many other places for them to go. So it's always been a problem in Campus Corner, and we have some solutions that we've developed over the recent years.
Great. Councilor Studley has a
Just for clarification, when you say public parking, and maybe it's because I've grown up in Norman and I have no clue what you're talking about, are you just meaning like the city builds a parking lot kind of in the middle of like a busy downtown area for that where anyone can just come and park?
Yes, city owned,
Okay.
so public, so anyone from the public can
Wouldn't
enter that
charge
space.
or anything?
I think there's a misconception, we'll show you that a little bit, but there's a misconception that all these parking lots in the downtown are public. No, none of them are. There's only one.
Okay.
We call it the Gray Street lot. That's the
Okay.
only place that anyone can roll into Norman and just get there and park, pay a $0.25 an hour and park. Think
Okay.
about any other cities you've been. Think about Oklahoma City. They are really good at parking. You can go anywhere in Bricktown, anywhere in downtown, and find a public parking lot. There's only 2 in Norman, 1 in downtown and 1 in Campus Corner, 2.
Okay.
It's remarkable. It just is a Norman thing. I think it's driven by money. They're expensive. Public parking is very expensive to build and maintain, and you never make it back in revenue. So it's a loss leader. You do it for economic development purposes. You do it to provide a place for people to come to your special districts and spend their sales tax. And that's why cities do it, and cities spend a lot of money on parking. Norman has chosen not to do that until, I think, recently. So anyway, we'll get you into some of this good stuff.
All right.
Okay. We're going to kind of hand off this presentation. We had it structured originally where one of us and then the other of us, but it kind of got morphed this afternoon. So we're going to hand off as we go along. But some of the things that we're going to talk about today, we're going to go through some of what's happening on Campus Corner now. We're going to talk about some of the recent revisions that we've made on Campus Corner. Then Taylor's going to talk about the past parking planning and the studies that have taken place. He's going to hand it back to, that's going to take him a while. It only looks like one bullet, but it's several slides that he's going to go through. But he's going to hand it back to me to talk about attempts that have been made to provide more parking in the Campus Corner area. We're going to talk through some potential uses for the Asp Avenue lot. And then we understand there's an interest also in commercial loading zones, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. So to start off, this image at the right side of the screen shows all of the public parking areas in Campus Corner. Those in blue are the on-street parking spaces, and that big green box is the Asp Avenue lot. We have 154 on-street parking spaces that now have pay stations. There are a few still up on the north part of Buchanan that have single space meters. The Asp Avenue lot has 2 pay stations in it, one at the west end, one at the east end. And there's numerous private lots within Campus Corner area as well that we have no control over. Speaking of the Asp Avenue lot, here is the what it was and what it became. A pretty significant investment by the city to create that parking lot, purchasing real estate, installing lighting.
I would
installing
mention that it wasn't an empty field. There was a building there and it burned down. So we didn't turn I guess we could have.
If you look real close, there's a date on that picture, I think.
Yeah.
The building was already gone by then, yes.
And it was a kind of an old 70s office building. So.
What's the date on that?
October
2018.
22, 2018.
2018.
2018, right. So recently, we took out all of the parking meters on Campus Corner as part of a beautification project that also improved sidewalks and curbs and things like that. It's going to address lighting. That's going to come later this year. That project was just recently issued a notice to proceed with the contractor. But we took out most of the single space meters and installed pay stations to try to get less things or get more things out of the sidewalk, make more sidewalk space available for people. We did that this summer. We rolled out those pay stations. That image at the left is an example of one of the pay stations that's actually on Boyd Street. I think there's 3 on Boyd, there's 1 on University, there's 2 on White, there's 2 or 3 on Buchanan, the rest are on Asp, so I think 4 or 5 on Asp. Total of 14 were installed. Currently, those pay stations operate from 8 to 9 at $1 an hour with a 2-hour max, and this hasn't changed since 2013, I think. That 2-hour max is in effect until 6 p.m., and after 6 p.m. you can park for 3 hours. Since the changeover to the pay stations in mid-July, we've collected a little over $41,000 at these pay stations, compared to just over $12,000 in all of 2021 at the Asp Avenue lot. So it is lower utilization rate, but the important thing about the Asp Avenue lot is it gets used on game days. So we like those 4 home games in September because a lot of revenue came in. But the rest of these changes that we made, there was another kind of overarching thing that we were trying to accomplish was we use Flowbird as our pay system in our Gray Street lot. OU uses it in all of their facilities, so we wanted to change and make Campus Corner use that same system so you could download one app and pay anywhere or pay for any parking space.
Councilmember Schiller?
Yeah, I just had a question about the ASP lot. Every time that I drive by it or walk by it, it's pretty empty. So do we have any metrics on, like, other than game day, like what time of day or what days of the week it typically gets utilized the most?
I track the daily usage of the lot. I cannot tell what time that they used it, but I could tell what days are busier than
Okay.
others. Yes, that is available to me.
Just curious.
Sure.
But it has not generated the kind of usage we thought it would. It's been hard to understand.
Yeah, do we have any idea of why? Is it just people don't know that it's there? Or, I mean, because I didn't know that it was there for a long time, or that it was, supposed to be utilized for Campus Corner, or people just don't want to walk. I mean, it's not far.
Location does not help it, to be honest with you. But also, thinking that it was installed in 2019, what happened in 2020
Right
didn't
before
help it either.
Yeah.
So the combination of those two things, I think, are not working to its betterment.
Yeah, have we thought about, like, signage to say, like, there's, like, overflow parking or excess parking, like, to alert people that there's more parking up there? Because I think that, people, I think, might not know that it's potentially there.
There is signing as you approach the lot that it's
Right.
there,
But I mean, like,
from other locations,
Yeah.
we could look into that.
or like even just on maybe the pay stations or something. I don't know, just as a
Well, and
potential. Not trying to add more back to the sidewalks as we've taken a bunch away, but
it's seemingly evident that they're not as valuable. That parking lot's not as, the spaces aren't as valuable as the street parking on Campus Corner.
right.
And so maybe it's the same price.
It is.
Yeah.
That might be a factor to think about too. Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated at the underperformance of this lot, especially when the community narrative is there's no place to park. And I was fascinated in just doing a quick read of both of the documents that you attached to our agenda, that the consultant in I think it was the 2016, the Jacob report, that the consultant, and this is a little not quite connected to the lot, but I think it's illuminating as to why we're seeing the underperformance in this lot, that literally identified that in the Campus Corner area generally, there is plenty of parking. There's not a deficit of parking, but specifically in our region of the country, we expect to pull up in front of Balfour's and not have to walk more than 5 steps to get in the door. So, to add to I find that fascinating.
Go to Walmart and
Yes, and walk across, yes,
whole parking
Yes.
lot,
Pavement.
which is more than
Right?
Walmart parking lot's bigger than all of Campus Corner. Just to
Yeah.
be clear.
so.
To purposely park in the back so you
I
need our
think,
exercise.
this is interesting to kind of focus on this as we talk about what the solutions are, because I feel like the Campus Corner merchants might also be able to help with this, to help educate their customers when their customers are complaining about no parking, or maybe even doing some kind of PSA now that we have a new communications director to, I don't know, sort of challenge the narrative that there's no place to park. And that maybe for our health and wellness and well-being, that walking a block is actually good for you. So, that's all.
You're right on.
Councilmember Studley.
Just a thought of after she said that is, why could we not? Because whenever I worked in Bricktown, I would have a parking permit, and so it would allow me to park cheaper or for free in certain parking lots.
If you were an employee.
Is that something that we could do for?
We'll get to
All
that.
right.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Hard
advance,
to have-
advance too many
And
slides
I
ahead.
don't
Let
want
you
to. Okay,
finish your
I don't want to
bullshit.
divert either, but it's just this lot just
We got
fascinates
excited.
me
But,
because
yeah,
there's
part
plenty
of-
of places
I
to
opened
park.
the floodgates.
Yeah.
Part of my experience on Campus Corner, and especially working the door at the deli and getting a real close-up look at traffic
Yeah.
patterns, kind of the natural way that people tend to look for parking on Campus Corner
It's
is
to go in that loop.
is down Buchanan,
Yeah.
down Ass, up down White, up Ass, down back down Boyd, and back around until you find some
Yes.
find one. Is
Yeah.
what I generally see people
Yeah.
doing, and what I've done
I'm
myself
guilty.
a few
Yeah.
times.
I think that's spot on too.
So that's kind of
yeah. It's not in front of them to go.
yeah. In
Oh, I
regard to
was just
signage
parking
and
there.
things like that, people just don't tend to
Yeah.
turn left there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But to your point, when I put the numbers in this morning and I put in the number of transactions that we had in the Asp Avenue lot, the average year-to-date is 18.
Per day.
Yes.
And how many
Transactions.
spaces are there? 61?
61.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, a transaction could be
Right.
an hour in length,
Right.
it could be 3 hours in length.
Right.
Don't know.
But it holds the same as this, like it couldn't be, if someone worked an 8-hour shift, they couldn't park there without having to go back to that and repay something? Or is that Asp
That's-
Avenue?
No, that is the case. They would have to move.
So it's that same 2 hour
It's got that
max
same 2 hour
until
max.
6, and then after 6, it's the 3 hours even in
Yes.
that. Okay.
And again, we canvassed the merchants and went through quite a process to establish all that, and they really felt comfortable with that. But that was before we had it, and so now we have learned, and this is a chance for council to kind of rethink that. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm really curious to see what you have to
Yeah.
say, because maybe that lot needs to be
You gotta, if you want
reprogrammed.
to park
Okay.
in front of the business, you got to pay $1 an hour. If you
Yeah.
want to walk a couple blocks, you pay 50 cents or
Yeah.
a quarter. Or,
So we
We
want
want to
to
stop talking.
We want to look
Sorry.
back, as Sean said, we've really looked at parking for like the last decade in Campus Corner and downtown. And so just want to take a quick look back at those studies. And we did a 2013 Campus Corner and downtown parking lot management business plan just to help staff identify priorities of, how do we actually utilize these lots? How much do people pay? Those different things. And we have some copies if anybody wants to take one home later.
I love paper.
We included there were some parking recommendations in the comprehensive transportation plan that was adopted in 2014. And then most recently, we had the 2016 Norman parking study, which you can see there at the bottom left. That's the Jacob study that Councilmember Hall mentioned. And then at the bottom right, we have the 2018 parking strategic plan that we worked really closely with Cleveland County on. And that's where we'll dive into a little bit more because it was the most recent. So in that
I
20...
should mention, the 2016, 2018, I think Councilmember Coleman would remember this, it was a partnership, City of Norman, Norman Downtown Association, Campus Square Merchants Association. What am I missing, David? There's one more. Is it Norman? Anyway, it was a
Yes,
partnership of
yes.
several agencies. We were the lead, but we really had a lot of involvement from the special district areas.
yeah.
Cleveland County, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was
Cleveland
thinking.
Yeah.
is Cleveland County.
And with those stakeholders, there was a lot of good ideas that came out of those plans. And most recently in the 2018 plan, there was an acknowledgement for some additional parking in those areas, downtown and Campus Corner. And we had some proposals for sites for new parking structures, which we have slides on in a couple slides. It proposed setting up a separate parking fund and governance structure and hiring additional staff and wanted to work with we were wanting to work with Cleveland County on the aspect of parking, so we're actively doing that now on if there's a joint venture on a parking authority or something like that, and trying to really prop up parking as something that we can really effectively manage and not have it on the back burner like we have in the past. So there are a lot of recommendations in the 2018 study about how to set up a parking governance structure within the city or as a separate authority. And there was a really big theme about consistent management, and David hit on that with the Flowbird technology of having it where customers or students, whoever, could go anywhere in Norman and pay for parking using the same app, relatively the same meter times and costs and enforcement as well. And then lastly, there was a lot of mention in this plan about wanting to think about multimodal. So parking as a part of a whole multimodal approach of increased walkability, bikeability, and additional mass transit to these areas. Because as parking demand goes up, usually those three modes, pedestrian, biking, and mass transit, usually those usages go up as well because there's just not a lot of parking, right? So it kind of pushes people to drive less and use other modes. A couple of maps, because we need to have some maps in every study, right? The one on the left is the total available spaces and percentage total occupied spaces by block. So that's for Campus Corner in the bottom, obviously, and downtown at the top. And it noted that relatively the spaces that are utilized the most are the ones outside the doors of the merchants, right?
Shocking.
And then, but if you look quickly right outside those ones that are the darker colors, there's really not a lot of utilization because people maybe aren't willing to walk unless they're right outside the door, right? Mm-hmm. The map on the right is supposed to show the total available spaces and percentage of private spaces by block. So we see that private spaces, private lots are more heavily utilized than the overall parking in those areas. And that's because, you know, like the Armstrong Bank has its own lot. It has a purpose. People drive there to go to work and they usually fill up that lot, right? There's a lot of demand and they built that specifically for that demand. So there's a lot of utilization on those private lots. Here's a couple of slides about the structures that were proposed in the 2018 plan, which we realize, you know, things constantly change with development. But here you see, is that Buchanan? No, it's University. Yeah, University Avenue, and there's White Street on the right. This is that large lot across from the Presbyterian Church.
This would be south of the hotel.
Yeah.
Right, just south of the Noun Hotel that's going in. So they were proposing a building. Not proposing building, but just the concept of where a parking garage could go, right?
That's the number one preferred site in the study.
Right.
So,
Councilor Hall.
I'm sorry. So this was the proposed parking structure from the 2018 study.
Right.
Because isn't that currently owned by First Presbyterian?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Okay.
they
'cause-
considered any site as and the next one also had some private portions of it, not necessarily public owned.
Okay, that's interesting to me because I also know that there was a proposal with a different property owner just directly north of Boyd House too as a potential site.
And again, we had conversations with these
Right.
folks, no
Yeah.
surprises, but
Okay.
yeah, the concept was where is the best place to put the parking where it
Right.
will get utilized?
And that was
And
before the
again,
hotel.
we don't own any land, we didn't own any land
Yeah.
on Campus Corner.
Okay.
And
interesting.
generally, a parking lot, I mean, if there's not a building on it and there's already a parking lot, it makes sense to elevate because you're not taking down
Oh yeah.
another
And this
use.
just
right?
happened to be the biggest parking lot on around Campus Corner is this area, already flat
Right.
and concrete. So yeah,
So-
it made sense.
Just a general idea of where one needs to be. It got into the amount of spaces that could fit in this footprint, but that would be all a part of the design. Parking garages are really costly. I think if you dive into the study, you can see that it's usually by space. You calculate it out, and it could range from I think in here they calculate like
5,000.
I was gonna say 30,000, yeah, so $25,000-$30,000 a space. Here's the other
There
proposed
you go.
Campus Corner structure, and the Asp Avenue lot is right where that white building is. So that's the building that burned down.
This was the building, the NEDC building that we purchased, and the lot is here.
Right. So they proposed a couple of orientations here. Again, to your point, this isn't all city owned. It was just a site location that would make sense. And again, either east-west or north-south, with the idea of it being directly outside of Campus Corner, and you wouldn't have to necessarily tear down a lot of built-up infrastructure, right? But you could get some additional parking on the periphery of Campus Corner, which we accomplished with the Asp Avenue lot. And it's interesting that
And
for this
today, the
proposal.
only thing that's there is our parking lot in the Orient Express building
Right.
that
And
has not been open in several years, despite what it may look like when you walk past it.
Right.
Just for those that don't know.
they're ready. If
Yeah.
they want to turn the lights on.
Ready for someone to
Tablecloths
make
on
an
the
offer.
table.
This was the premise that council chose to buy that property. It's a
Yeah.
$2 million purchase. You pay $2 million for that piece of land and the bill, or what became a demolished building. And that was why you did that, or among the reasons that you did that was the notion that this land and more land could become a parking structure.
Yeah. That's the unfortunate thing about where you need parking. The real estate is very expensive, so a lot of the cost is purchasing that land to, if it's flat and it's already a parking lot, or it doesn't have development, that makes sense. But to possibly tear down, another use just to elevate parking. So.
Back to me. So there have been a couple of things that tried to get off the ground to try to address the parking solution in Campus Corner. One of them was in 2014, the 211 Boyd PUD project proposed to construct a multi-story office, retail, and restaurant building. And this was going to be where that convenience store is on Boyd, west of what's now Dean's Row, and at that time it was DeBar. But it was going to have 182 parking spaces in it that could go towards this solution for parking on Campus Corner. That application, I think it went through the Planning Commission, but it never went to council. I don't
I think it
know.
did.
We approved a proposal from Rainey Powell,
I stand
a
corrected then.
5-story commercial
And
building.
he's just never moved on it.
Right.
It's not mixed use either. It is all commercial, with the idea that the Campus Corner market would still be in the first ground level, but
Right.
there would no longer be gas station pumps,
Right.
and that the stories above it would be office space for university, for
Okay.
whatever, and then the parking structure between the front and the Holmberg house. And they had letters of support from the Holmberg house and others, so we approved it. I recall, but it has
He must have not come back.
nothing's
with
ever
a final
happened.
like that.
Yeah, just never got off the ground.
Yeah,
Or maybe
so,
still
and I don't know.
pending.
It's been 3 or 4 years at least, so it may even I don't know if it's expired or anyway.
Well, I pulled this information from the staff report that I did for the Planning Commission. That was in 2014, so it's getting close.
Yeah.
There was another proposal, I say here in late 2015, early 2016. I've since found out it was more like late 2017, early 2018, where somebody was coming in with the concept to redevelop the east side of Asp on the north end of Campus Corner that would have had some parking spaces in it and a garage.
So
We had, go ahead.
the one like that, the Risser project.
That was on the other side of the street though.
So this was on the
This was on the east side.
east side. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
I remember
okay.
what you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had discussions, but no application was ever submitted on that particular project, so it never went anywhere. Now, some potential uses for this Asp lot. I know Sean said $2 million. All the information I could find was we spent about 1.25. Maybe the real estate number was higher than what I was seeing, what I was looking at. But when you talk about real estate, lighting, and those pay stations, we have a lot invested in that lot. But since February of 2019, when it opened, it's been lower than the on-street spaces. We think that's, again, a combination of where it's at, the fact that you have to walk that extra 2 blocks to get to Campus Corner. And again, COVID didn't help any of it, for certain. We have had meetings with the Campus Corner merchants, and we have talked about, hey, the Asp Avenue lot is underutilized. If your employees need a place to park, we could probably work out something where you can lease some spaces at a lower rate. I know that offer has been extended at least twice, if not 3 times, and they've never taken us up on that.
Have you gotten any feedback as to, or just no response?
It's all, once, when the offer is made, it's all, oh yeah, it's a great idea, we should do that, and then nothing.
Yeah. That's unfortunately not an uncommon story.
Yeah.
I've heard out of Campus Corner. In my opinion, I don't know that if that's the case, I don't know that I want to wait for Campus Corner. Or I don't even know if we need to have them involved, really, if we were to have some sort of, and it might come up in your presentation, but tell those employees, come down to City Hall, we've got a parking permit for you. You don't need to go through your employer, you don't need to go through Campus Corner. you can use our city lot, and maybe they pay a
Discounted fee.
discounted monthly fee for it or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I've heard over and over again frustration from folks about trying to get things done on Campus Corner and the follow through from whoever it may be.
Right.
Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, and I may be jumping ahead too, but it just seems in our recovery in the post-pandemic world that we're in, and the frequent concerns I hear from local business owners with their inability to be able to hire fill the kinds of jobs that are readily available on Campus Corner. It seems like addressing the parking issue of low-paid employees would be an incentive for maybe filling their employment deficits at the moment. Anyway, just a comment.
I mentioned we do a version of this in downtown. You may not be aware that, I don't know how many of those spaces, about 30 or 40 of those are
45, yeah.
long-term leases. Same principle. We were having less utilization than we had hoped, and once we sort of figured that out, we actually got with the downtowners and the merchants and said, hey, let's utilize this asset better, and we added these long-term. And so those businesses, generally the businesses buy a block, they'll buy a block of 10 and give those to their employees, or so, however they provide that, but they buy them from us, and we provide X number of long-term spaces, 8 to 5 during the day, then they're open in the evening.
Excellent.
And we could do the same thing here. And at least at that point, we wouldn't be giving away the lot. We would be getting something back to try to recoup some of those investment costs. Commercial loading zones. The image at the right, this is from one of the business plans. I don't remember which version it is, 2015 or 2018. But that shows you the location of the commercial loading zone within Campus Corner. Generally, they operate from 3 to 10 a.m. is when they're in effect. I believe there's the one that's up at Buchanan and White might be 7 to 7. But in general, they're 3 to 10. They're signed. Depending on how long the zone is, there's going to be more signs in it, but there's a sign with the left arrow at one end of the zone, a sign with the right arrow at the other end of the zone, and a double-headed arrows in the middle. So they're very visible. But you think about where they're located. The one on Asp, right next door to it is Starbucks. People who go to Starbucks, I'm not jumping on people that go to Starbucks, but they're only in there for a minute, right? Parking enforcement they're not sitting there all the time. So they're not going to see necessarily how many people park there for just that minute, run in, and oh, by the way, this delivery truck came and needed to unload in that space, and he can't. There has been discussion about moving it on the other side of the street. I think that Balfour was kind of reluctant to do that early on because he's the only business that opens at 9, whereas everybody else opens at 10. So he was kind of concerned about having a semi parked in front of his store when he's open from 9 to 10. He's kind of come off of that recently, so that may be one thing that we do entertain.
This is an item this is our next item. This specific issue, are we wanting to kind of fold it into this one?
Yes.
Maybe?
Okay.
That's fine.
We're just here to help, Councilor, so whatever you'd like. We just did
Yeah.
that was on your mind.
We don't have to have a separate one to talk about that since we're already
We can just
topics on-
linger on this slide.
Yeah. If there's no objection from the committee to fold item 3 into this.
No.
I just want to, before we move off the parking thing real quick, that Asp Avenue lot, have we explored maybe the idea of using it as a Uber and Lyft staging area, essentially, basically providing a quick
That was
access?
talked about early on, but that never really got off the ground either.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, that was a direction right before COVID, and council met, and it had to do also with some other public safety concerns in the Campus Corner area. And we were ready to pull that trigger, and then COVID hit, and there just hasn't been a demand. And so I suspect, it's a great idea. I suspect we'll get back to that.
Appreciate that. Thank
You
you.
have further slides about parking stuff.
No,
Right.
this is
Okay.
Oh,
pretty
okay.
much the,
Well,
not
there's-
to let the
Sure.
horse out of the barn.
Okay.
But that's the last thing.
Well, definitely some more to talk about on the parking stuff, but I do
Sure.
want to address this real quick. In the reason why I had asked for this agenda item is I do go to that Starbucks almost every morning, and I've seen Councilor Hall there. I see Judge Tupper there every morning. I see Scott Lambert with the hotel there every morning. I mean, and I voted for the changes and the addition of the designated loading zones a couple years ago. And my observation of it lately, especially, has been that the trucks are parking wherever they want. And kind of my boiling point last week was because I always come down Boyd, I turn down Buchanan, I come around, and I turn on Asp, and one of the trucks is taking up the entire west lane of Asp. There's only now one lane to turn off of Boyd onto Asp. He's blocking the entire lane of traffic, and he's got his cones. And I got so mad, I just went up to him and was like, "Man, what are you doing? Why are you taking up an entire lane of traffic?" I see, "Do you see that sign on the other side of the street? It says commercial loading zones." And he's like, "Where?" I said, "Right there." And he goes, "Oh." And I was just like, I've sent many pictures to City Manager Pyle from trucks that are parked either taking up the entire lane of traffic or they're partially taking it up and they put their cones out. And I'm just like, "You're just taking the whole street, huh?" And so, they are using the west side of
Yes.
Asp right now every single day,
Every day.
in front of Balfour, and so one of the reasons I want to talk about it was get an update on how it's been going since we implemented this, how it's being enforced, because I recall part of the increasing the cost of campus corner parking was to pay for a campus corner parking enforcement officer whose job was to enforce parking on campus corner. And there's just and of course there's demands everywhere, but kind of an update on that position, if it's still, and I see them out there sometimes, and I understand fully they can't get every person coming in out of Starbucks, and that's another issue I think we might need to think about. There may need to be a couple spots that are for, we've had some temporary ones where it's, if you're going in for 5 minutes and back out, and that's
Well,
it.
with these changes, one of the things that we did with the existing commercial loading zone on the east side was eliminated 4 spaces from it, so that there could be some spaces for
Right.
Starbucks.
Yeah, just
Now,
between the.
You rattled off way more than 4 names, so if everybody's driving there, they're probably going to fill up all those spaces anyway. But
Yeah. It's just, but that's been my observation. Just going there in the mornings and seeing it. It's not every single day, but it seems like every Thursday for sure. There's probably 4 or 5 trucks all at the same time on both sides of the street, and so.
It's been a real challenge.
Yeah.
We met recently with the merchants. Jeff Stewart's been one of our great liaisons down there, and to their credit, they try really hard to work with their delivery operations, but there's so many, whether it's food trucks or beer trucks or whatever, and drivers change, and it's just an ongoing battle. So they really try to work with it, but it's a little bit of a difficult thing to manage, and then it falls to enforcement. So Chief,
Yeah, we do have that lady. She's off right now for some health problems. But we drove through the other day right before you sent a picture, and they weren't there. And really,
Of course not.
they park. They're on both sides, and there's not a lot of people down there in the morning.
Right.
I just wish if they are wherever they are, and they'll be farther north than Balfour's too, pulled, and they'll set in the road or halfway. I just wish they would just pull all the way
just
over to
get
the
in.
parking spots because nobody's there.
Yeah.
Just don't block the lane.
Yeah.
And there could be 2 or 3 there at the same time in the mornings. So it gets, that one loading zone just isn't enough. But if they would just get off the road, it would help. Because because most businesses don't open till 10 down there. But it's like Sean was saying, it's just that constant change of drivers and who they're ordering from and different trucks.
that
Yeah.
come that day, it's tough to keep up with.
Yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
a byproduct, I mean, just a little history, that we, ASP was one way for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And we converted it to two-way. It's a good placemaking technique, it's great, we all like it. But one of the byproducts of that is we took away their loading zone. This came out of that change about 15, 20 years ago. And we've been struggling with it ever since. So how do we coexist with the new two-way narrow street with on-street parking and still provide the product that these businesses need to conduct their business?
Councilor Peacock?
Yeah, I was just curious to that same point, if you could maybe stripe the lane, not the parking spot, but stripe basically a diagonal hatch that said no loading in the lane itself, and clearly designate the commercial loading zone as such. I mean, really just draw attention to it.
The issue is that they're only the loading zone until a certain time, and then they're just regular
Yeah.
parking for the rest of the.
Yeah.
I think what I'm talking about is in the actual street,
Oh, yeah.
in the lane, basically saying so trucks don't park in the street.
I see.
You just basically hatch the street in front of the loading zone so that it's clear that.
Councilmember Hall, and then.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if we had any kind of data of, are they compliant with that 10 a.m. or is it trouble after that too?
I know Jeff mentioned recently when Dave and I were down there that they struggle with that too.
So
And
they're-
again, who knows what the business practices are that drive all that. COVID could have something to do with it.
yeah.
But that was his frustration. They try and they work with these folks, but they're just another customer that is getting the product.
Okay.
So it's just really difficult on the private side of all this to manage that.
Yeah.
So they were the ones who said, well, listen, the Starbucks thing is driving everybody crazy. Let's move it over to the west side. I said, listen, we'll move it wherever you guys want. You tell us what you want to do. We're here to put up signs and markings. That's what we don't tell them what to do with that space. We try to keep them in business. That's our goal.
Yeah, cut out like, there's a place for motorcycles and the 3 spots north of that is what they made for Starbucks there on Aspen. And yeah, it's just like everybody says, those people, and we used to come down there, they pull in, they run in and get their coffee, and they come back out and they go. And they're never hitting the meter stuff. But
Yeah, I think some people might have done it when the meter was right in front of the space, but now that they have to maybe walk down, they're like, I can run into Starbucks faster than I can run down to that pay station.
Can beat that enforcement officer.
Yeah. So, Councilmember Schuler.
Yeah, I'm kind of just processing this and really thinking about kind of an experience that I know, I guess, firsthand, but then thinking, so I don't really have an answer and it's not really a question. It's kind of just, I guess, a comment. So my stepfather owns a restaurant in Pittsburgh, and it's in kind of on a main street, 2-lane road, and they, in front of his restaurant, they don't even have the luxury of having the, pull in reverse park or angled parking. It's literally parallel parking, so it's not even deep. And he needs to get, the large, semis coming in from like US Foods and like his food distributors. And so he literally schedules them at, 4 and 5 in the morning. And I don't know exactly what like their bureau restrictions are, but I don't see when I go there delivery trucks for all of the merchants that are along that business front ever during the day. So I'm going to do some research and ask questions about what they're doing there to kind of facilitate that for their, and like they don't have, like everything is on like small little back alleys, like they do not have space or room for any of that. So I'm just curious, like, have you done any research on like what other, I'm sure that you have, or asked questions about what other cities and towns are doing, and I guess what are we doing on Main Street, and are there just other options because of our other streets that have like cross streets and things like that. So I know that was a kind of roundabout way of saying, like, are there other options for us, and can we restrict times in a different way and be, I know that the merchants probably don't want to hear that, like, because they don't want to get up at 4 and 5 in the morning to have their distributors come and drop off stuff. But they also don't want people to block their front of their businesses. So,
It's interesting that you would say that, because at the same meeting that Sean and I were at with Jeff Stewart, most of the drivers have a key. They don't, you're not there to let them in.
Oh.
see, my stepdad meets them.
Yeah.
And he has like a drop chute cut in the sidewalk that has a gate that opens up that goes to his basement. I know we don't really have basements here, but, and then they shoot the food and stuff down into the basement, which is where their stock is, directly from the street.
Right.
Wow, so they don't even have to be present.
That's interesting.
So,
yeah.
are there other options to think about timing? Just a thought.
I mean, yeah, I would think like allowing loading on both sides of the street before 7 a.m. or something. After 7, it's only on one side, or maybe we deliveries can't be done after 9. I don't know. Don't want to make it harder for the businesses. It's already hard enough to get
Right.
supplies and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it is definitely an issue when they're blocking a whole lane of traffic, and and more so when they're closer to the intersection at Boyd and Asp, and you got cars trying to turn on, people trying to come out, it's, people backing out of Starbucks. So yeah, I again just wanted kind of an update on our enforcement ability, because I wasn't sure, I hadn't seen her out there in a while, and
Yeah, please.
so okay, but we do still have that position, and that's what it partly was when we increased the cost of parking meters and things, was to help pay for that position. So, Councilor Call.
So when she is available, I mean, obviously she can't be working the entire time that, I mean, does she have like a staggered hours of,
Or just like 8 to 2 generally.
Okay.
That's what her, she was a part-time thing. It's just like Holman was saying, Councilmember Holman. It's a part-time position where she was just to cover this type of
okay.
issue, and then on
And then
Saturday, so.
then do we have other parking enforcement?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
And we'll
got
send
you.
them down there, like when he'll send pictures or somebody complains wherever it is in the city, we send somebody.
Because I just hearing from people who visit Campus Corner, the one thing I'll say is the perception is there's a parking enforcement person there all the time, because they're getting taken. So we've got the bluff in there.
Yeah. So, and that was part of what we were thinking a couple of years ago, was that the parking situation on Campus Corner is so unique compared to anywhere else in town, that it needed a dedicated person to, if we're going to have the meters the way they are, and we're going to have the loading and unloading and just all the other interactions that take place, that really requires someone to be there pretty much all the time. And we also, when we increased the cost of the meters, we extended the time, because they used to end at 5.
Yeah.
Or it said 6, but parking enforcement, I think, stopped at 5. And so you kind of, if you knew Campus Corner well enough, you knew you could park for free after 5. So, and
It's like campus.
And we never had it on Saturday either.
and there's a secret spot that I sometimes park in that is
Don't
it's a loading zone until 7, but there's not a meter on it, and you can park there for free between 7 and 9. So, but I'm not going to tell any of you where that's at. So you have to figure it out on your own.
That shouldn't be too hard.
It's the only spot like it on Campus Corner.
Okay.
But since we have revised regulations, we've extended time. It used to be free on Saturdays also, and so we added Saturdays. We extended the time you have to pay. We increased the cost of it. So there's been a lot of changes in the last 5 years.
And it's still free on Sunday, right?
Still free on
Yeah.
Sundays. Yeah. And
So.
Councilor Hall.
I just have a question on this particular item. So are you all recommending that it get switched to the other side, or okay?
Again, we are happy to drill down a little bit. We just had a recent discussion, and it was generated by the merchant.
Okay.
And again, there's a real spirit of cooperation.
Oh, sure.
Down there with us, and always has been.
Yes.
But they're also individuals, they all have their own little things,
Right.
their own, some of the restaurants probably don't demand the pre-10 a.m. thing, and so it's hard to get them all on one page.
So
frankly.
as a result of your most recent meeting, you mentioned that is Balfour's the only other business that's open before 10 other than Starbucks?
That's what we were told.
I wonder if it's worth it for him to be open from 9 to 10.
He was in our meeting.
Yeah.
I think he was open to this.
Yeah, he
Okay.
seemed to be fine with it. I don't know whether I don't want to put words from his mouth, but it's almost as if, well, I really don't do that much business between 9 and 10
Yeah.
anyway. It's kind of what he
Yeah.
said.
So I
Okay.
think if you'd like, we'll be happy to drill down and see if that's an option they still want to pursue. Again, it's easy for us. We're happy to make that change. Council's already done all the legislation to enforce it, so
Okay.
nothing for you to do. It's just
Okay.
a matter of changing signs and informing people and then doing the enforcement.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, what you needed from us, but, based on I know you have a running conversation with the Campus Corner merchants, which I totally appreciate. But, if you feel like there's some modification to make there that would improve things that they're on board with.
Happy to do
Well,
it.
I noticed them on Buchanan in front of the dispensary that's right there. A lot of them will park in those parking, even though it's not designated on our map there. They're just, it's not as busy of a street.
They can pull up there. The reason
Right.
like on Asp that they don't get all the way off the road is the driver is worried about getting blocked in.
Right.
Yeah.
Not being able to get out. Or over on Buchanan, they pull up there shortly and there's no spot there at the end where they can pull on
Right.
out.
Yeah. So maybe we make that.
Happy to do that. Also, relative to parking, we would love to bring back to you some ideas for the lot. That hasn't come up with council yet.
Yeah.
I think we're at that point where we've learned that it's underutilized and
Councilor Hall?
I was just gonna say, based on that, on the parking piece and what brought this to the agenda today, I'm really interested in trying to find a way, since the lot is so underutilized, we're not losing revenue by considering, I would love to find some kind of program for the Campus Corner employees, since your outreach to the merchants has not really resulted in anything. But if there's something that we can do to, maybe if we have more and more employees parking there, other people will realize, I can just see a lot of positive benefits to having some kind of incentive for the employees that are on Campus Corner, to have parking at a reduced rate, eliminate the need to run in and out with the parking thing. So I'm really interested in pursuing that.
Councilor Studley?
So I just want to piggyback off of what Councilmember Hall was saying is I think it would be pointless to build another parking space if we've got this one available. And I think that, like she said, if we set up some type of permits, 8 to 10 hours for employees, discounted rate, something like that, I think that would alleviate some of these calls. So I would like to definitely see more about that. And I really like what you were saying about just exclude the business owners. Who cares
Yeah.
if we're just letting people know if you are employed in
Show your
this
proof of
block.
proof that you work there, whatever.
Yeah, then you can come down to City Hall and get your own parking permit. Why not?
Councilmember Schuler?
Yeah, just kind of same thing. And to talk a little bit more about the situation from where my stepfather is, that's what they ended up doing there. Because they have a few public lots that are kind of behind on some of the side streets, and then this on-street parking, and they're still metered parking. And it's much cheaper. It's 25 cents an hour and has been. And then they do December free until Christmas, and they're free on Sunday too. So, but that's what they did. They created a monthly pass for owners, because my stepdad even had no place to park. He uses the back alley of his business for walking freezers and coolers and stuff like that, so he has no parking spot, and so he would run and he would just get tickets and just pay them. And he the police department is across the street, and so he knew all of the police departments and the parking enforcement, and they would work with him. But he's if you would just create a system where I would pay what I need to pay if you give me the opportunity. And the same with his servers, they would run and feed the meter, and they only had a couple of meters on the back of this one lot that were the 8-hour meters, and everything else was 2 or 3 hours, a much shorter time span that they could park. And so he would have his employees running out to feed meters every once in a while. And so I think that it just makes sense to provide an opportunity.
we'll get to work on it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Definitely want to find some way, if it means, and not just employee parking for our parking lot, but I think we do need to consider the price of it. That $1 an hour, just it's the ones on the street parking on Campus Corner could probably get more than $1 an hour, I'd bet. But you know, that one just isn't seemingly as valuable in the eyes of the public, and so maybe if we reduce that cost per hour for everyone,
Yeah.
you know, if you want to park in front of the store, you're gonna have to pay more. If you're willing to walk a couple blocks, you get
Nice.
it's 50 cents less or whatever.
Surge pricing.
And maybe that gets some more demand, and then over the years, as it gets more and more used, a future council might raise it back up to $1. But I definitely,
One of the beauties of council's investment in the smart meters is we have maximum flexibility. We can
Yeah.
change it tomorrow morning.
just like that, yeah.
So we can do lots of things that we didn't used to be able to do with metered parking, whether it's rates, whether it's hours,
really
whether
cool.
it's days.
Yeah.
There's really nothing we can't do. So we just need to find that secret
Make it happen.
sauce that's going to work down there.
And for loading zones, I don't know if
Really nothing we can't do. So we you made me listen to my own voice.
Trying to get you later.
if staff wants to take a more deeper dive, than just the last few days maybe, and if there's any recommendations for any changes, if there's any areas on Buchanan that you would recommend adding to the loading zones, or if there's, just kind of like the desire paths, if there's places where people are walking, if they're parking in a certain spot and it's not, a major problem, and that's just kind of naturally where they're going, maybe we consider designating that spot as loading and unloading perhaps. But I don't know if you would recommend coming back to this committee or to a council study
We'd love to
session.
come back next month if we can, and that
Okay.
gives us time to get with all the parties.
Yeah,
and
let's
work
do
on it.
that.
Okay.
So plan to come back next month and continue this discussion about parking, campus corner parking, employee parking on campus corner, and commercial loading and unloading zones.
Great.
Okay, any questions, comments from staff or committee members?
Real
Councilor
quick,
Peacock?
what is the general zoning in Campus Corner? Is it all C3 for the most part?
I think, see.
Well, it's something to talk about actually, because Center City, Campus Corner is not part of the Center City form-based code area because there's a clause or whatever you want to call it in the policy that says until there is a parking solution provided for Campus Corner in the form of either a structure or we might be able to argue that the parking lot we built already could fulfill that,
Yeah.
but that Campus Corner would not become part of the form-based code until then. And that was a trade-off because the existing zoning on Campus Corner is C3 for the most part, which is unlimited height and no parking
Right,
requirement.
that's why I asked.
And so Center City form-based code in this area has a height limit.
Yeah.
And the trade-off was, okay, we're going to take away your ability to build as tall as you want, which was a big deal for some of those folks. We're going to take away your ability to build as tall as you want. In exchange, we will provide a public parking solution of some kind in a parking garage or whatever it may be. But until that happens, Campus Corner doesn't get folded into the... So anything built on Campus Corner doesn't have to comply with Center City
Yeah.
form-based code
They're exempt
yet
right now.
because of that.
Yep.
But our parking lot doesn't count?
Well, that's a good question
Yeah.
for us to discuss, I
Didn't
think.
exist then, so
Yeah.
this is all fairly new. It's
Yeah,
only-
and
So
we had only thought
something
about...
to add to our
We had really only thought about
thought committee
a parking structure being
that will be
built,
meeting.
that would be the thing. But yeah, we weren't thinking about building a city parking lot at that time. And so it's possible, maybe legal staff or planning might want to look in to see if that satisfies the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these things overlap.
Yeah.
Everything touches,
Yeah.
the parking touches the zoning, and but no, this parking lot is only a couple years old. So
Yeah.
that's just, that wasn't an issue then.
Yeah,
So-
it's really fascinating to read to see all the changes that have been made since 2016, but still the general idea.
And I would note too
Still
that we did approve, the council a couple years ago, we approved the only new private lot that I can think of, which was Othello's along University there. There was a empty lot that they had that connected to their property. And so they came forward with a proposal to add parking, a privately owned parking lot there. So that's the only, our city lot and that Othello's lot are the only new parking that I'm aware of that we've added to Campus Corner.
And really, in that 2016 report, one of the recommendations, well, there's several recommendations that are really relevant to what we're talking about today, and that is not to add any more surface parking lots and to do shared parking and to utilize all the church lots that are empty and in abundance in the immediate area.
Ideally, we'd be able to someday eliminate, specifically that giant one right in the middle of Campus Corner,
Yeah.
right at the corner of White and Asp.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I've always thought that would be a great Campus Corner Central Park green space, that it could be a much higher, better use for Campus Corner than a parking lot is. So, and that parking lot's full; it's used all the time. And another issue about those private parking lots, in my experience over the years working on Campus Corner, there have been multiple attempts to put gates on them, to require tokens, and it, without fail, I mean, they last for a few weeks, but then one Friday night at the bars and they get out and somebody's stuck.
Slam through it.
Urban terrorism.
Well, and what about the one behind? Where is it? It's like the salon.
Yeah.
Like the one that has the pull
That
through.
one's-
They
Yeah.
always have an attendant or like someone that's
Yeah, they
watching.
sometimes pay someone to
someone
to
Pepe's,
Yeah.
Pepe's, and those pay someone to sit there, and
Pay attention and ask.
sort of, I guess. I mean,
It's got a little radio.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're all the same is true in downtown. That was a common theme, is that we feel like we're wasting a lot of valuable land
Yeah.
on private parking lots. This is the public-private debate. If the public provides the parking lot or parking structure, we can put that land back into good use for buildings and services. But until the city, or probably the city, provides public parking, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
That was the essence of the study.
Okay.
One other loading zone comment. When we were putting in the new pay stations, we had one in the island that's in front of Fuzzy's Tacos, and a delivery truck hit it.
Yeah.
Man.
Our fleet division was able to bend the metal back so we could be moved to another location out of the loading zone that's really not even there.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. There's a street light that's off on Campus Corner that's knocked over. It's been removed, but it's missing right now because someone ran into it. So.
We're getting to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tight squeeze. You gotta know how to drive down there. So, okay, well, if there's nothing further, I think this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Fascinating.